Hi, and welcome back to the weekly woo for November 3rd to November 9th, 2025. So, we are going to start off the reading with the planetary shifts and the overshadowing energies. So, we will start off with, as of November 4th, Mars is going to leave Scorpio and is going to enter into fire sign Sagittarius. So, all your energy and all your go getter energy and your willpower is going to turn into fiery, go getter, happy-go-lucky, good-natured, visionary Sagittarius. So that's a really, really good move. Mars is happy being in the fire signs. November 5th, we are going to have our super full moon in Taurus at 13 degrees. And remember, when we have a super full moon, it means it's actually closer to the Earth, which makes the moon appear big because it is closer to the Earth. And it will actually have more pull on the Earth as well. So it does, anytime you have a super moon, it will affect the Earth or the tectonic plates a little bit more than just a normal full moon, right? Because it's a little more intense because it's that much closer to Earth. November 6th, we are going to have Venus entering into Scorpio. So Venus is leaving her home sign of Libra, where she loves, and it's entering into Scorpio, which is a detriment sign. So it's not, it doesn't function as well in Scorpio as what it would in its home sign of Libra, right? It's, every time I see that combination, it can be very lustful, it can be very desire-ridden, it can be, and it's also, where's that conflict within relationships, like that stinger in the tail. Scorpio is intense, it's emotional, and it wears that Scorpio stinger on the tail. So to me, every time I see this combination, and it doesn't always have to be like this, but it's like emotional, intense relationships that can kind of get a little waspy. That's always every time I see that combination, it reminds me of that. Or it can be that intense, lustful relationship, where it's very, very desire-ridden on both sides. Remember, Venus is very, very sensual, and Scorpio is very, very sexual as well. So keep that in mind. So that can play out many different ways, but it's Venus in Scorpio is in its detriment sign. It doesn't like being there. It does not function well there. Okay, November 7th, we have Uranus retrograde, and it's going to be leaving Gemini because it's going to go back into its final pass into Taurus. Okay, so Uranus is in retrograde status. It's in the first 0-1 degree of Gemini, and it's actually retrograding back into the sign of Taurus. And when it retrogrades back into the sign of Taurus, it's going to be entering at that 29th anaretic degree. So it means business. It's upset. It's turbulent. Anytime you have the anaretic degree at 29 degrees, it becomes turbulent. It becomes usually it acts out in the negative value first before it ever straightens out. So it's intense, and it means business. It's turbulent. It's all over the place. So it's kind of a little bit out of control, especially when you're talking with Uranus. It's out of control, full of surprises. It's that out of the blue shock, surprise, chaos planet, okay? So it is re-entering into Taurus, and so that will be its last pass. And so just remember, Uranus only goes through the zodiac belt every 84 years. And so it really sits in a sign for about 7 years per sign. So we're coming to the end. So it's making its final pass. And chances are a lot of us won't live long enough to see, I know I won't be living long enough to see this Uranus and Taurus transit again. And Uranus does not like being in Taurus anyway. So interesting fact is, when I looked at my dad's birth chart, well, he was actually born with Uranus and Taurus in his birth chart, and he actually died with Uranus and Taurus as well. So he was about, that 80-year marker, and so I actually noticed that one day and looked it up and thought, well, how interesting is that? Okay, anyway, moving on. And so that will basically, oh, no, it's not. So November 9th, we are going to have Mercury retrograde. Okay, so that was the one thing I wanted to mention here. I just had to turn the page to find it. And so, yes, so Mercury retrograde from November 9th to November 29th, okay? So, and just a little thing about Mercury retrograde, the do's and the don'ts. During Mercury retrograde, it's never a good time to start anything new. Retrograde means review, revise, restructure, revamp, having to redo plans. So it's usually not advisable book appointments or go crazy booking appointments, because chances are they're going to be changed. You're going to have to reschedule. So it's not advisable to start new businesses during Mercury retrograde or any personal planet retrograde, but especially Mercury retrograde. So you wouldn't want to start new businesses. You would not want to incorporate. You would not want to register a new business. It's not the time to buy any sort of electronics. So I mean iPods, iPads, computers, any sort of electronic thing. If you must, it's advisable that either you buy replacement insurance with it, because chances are you'll need it. I've tried it, I've tested it, and I did need the insurance. Not a good time to buy vehicles, cars, trucks, any sort of motorized quads, any sort of thing like that, because it's the lemon season. That's what I like to refer to as Mercury retrograde, as lemon season for any sort of vehicle or off-road vehicle, whatever. And it's not a good time to buy appliances either, right? So it's lemon season pretty much for everything. And so when you book, say, appointments, lawyer appointments, doctor appointments, chances are just expect that you're going to have to rebook them, because it's probably going to work out. And it's also advisable if you, and lots of times we don't have a choice, but for elective surgery. So if you have a choice for an elective surgery, it is always, always, always recommended, do not do these during Mercury retrograde or any personal planet retrograde, because if things are going to go sideways, it will be then. So you have malfunctioning testing equipment, or if you get test results, it's something you might want to have a second opinion on, because lots of times the wires get crossed, the communication is wrong. And so second opinions are always a good idea. And for Mercury retrograde, I've actually had people say, what the hell is it actually good for? Well, something you don't want to overbook, because it's probably not going to work out. So just go with the flow, right? Another good thing to do during Mercury retrograde is rest. So it is a good chance for about that 3-week span to sit back and have rest and just roll with the punches. It's also good for last minute magic, so last minute opportunities that can come along, unexpected things that kind of pop up, and if you were booked, you wouldn't be able to do them. So that's another thing you can do with Mercury retrograde. And also my favorite is to have another kind of kick at the cat. So it allows you time to redo and perfect things. So if you were like writing up on a contract or an agreement or something, and definitely it's not a time to sign contracts and agreements, by the way, because there'd be problems with the paperwork or problems with the details. But it allows you to go back over and redo contracts and redo agreements or redo anything. So just to perfect it. So it allows you that 3-week time span to perfect whatever you're working on. And often you can be going back to old projects or old things. So it's also the time to work on, like I said, old items, old projects you've started, just old things or current things. It is not the time to do anything new, period. So just keep that in mind and roll with it as best you can. And if you want to test it, go ahead, because I've done that 100 times just to see, because I'm always curious. Okay, so this week when I look at it, it's fairly busy. And something that jumps out at me right away is we are boxed in by 2 trines. So trines are always really, really, really good aspect. They're smooth flowing, they're good luck, they're kind of good fortune oriented. Things just fall into place on their own. It's easy flowing energy. So we have a trine on the 3rd, a trine on the 8th. So that's why I say we're boxed in by 2 trines. So that's really, really quite lovely. But this week is similar to last week. So it does not come without its problems, and it does not come without its hiccups. So when I say that is because within that boxed in time frame of 2 trines between the 3rd and 8th, we actually have Mars opposition Uranus. That's a hard aspect. When I see that aspect, Mars opposition Uranus, that just screams loudly to me, be very, very cautious when you're driving, because that to me is very accident ridden, especially when you're mixing in with pre-shadow Mercury retrograde. So that's look twice, look 3 times, make sure everything's okay. So it's going to be unexpected problems. And it's also can be air strikes, those kind of things going on. So when you they can also refer to airstrikes from the air, those kind of problems. Anytime you have Uranus is the sky god, and every time you have Mars is the god of war. So it's the god of war mixing with the unexpected sky god, okay? So it's problems. Every time you see opposition, it's trouble, it's conflict, it's problem being pulled in 2 different ways. And if that can actually be somewhat unexpected violence or violent tendencies or acts of violence going on, and that most can be globally or anything like that, or personal, of course. But that's a tough one when you're mixing those 2 planets. That's a hard aspect with 2 major heavyweight planets involved. The other square we have on the 7th is a Venus square Pluto. Again, that's a fairly tough one too. Anytime you have anything square with Pluto, any planet, that's tough, tough, tough. So like I said, it does not come without its problems this week. It does not come without its hiccups, but the last 3 weeks are very, very similar in flavor. So we have quite a few trines, which is quite lovely. It's quite unusual. But we have our problem makers, our troublemakers, and our oppositions and squares. So we have 2 trines, and we have 1 opposition, 1 square involved with heavy-duty, heavyweight planets involved with the problematic aspects, okay? Then, in the middle of all this, that's where we have that super full moon in Taurus at 13 degrees. So the one thing I will caution everybody out there is just behave. So do think twice, 3 times before speaking and acting, because this week can go really, really, really well, but it can go very, very sideways very, very quickly. And when we have a super full moon in Taurus, remember, new moons and full moons always bring out the worst behavior in people. It makes people angry and they want to lash out. And we have a lot of Scorpio energy here yet. And so that can be the lash out, that can be fighting, that can be words. Once they're said, they can never be taken back. So do be very, very mindful of your behavior, your emotions. Keep everything in check. Stay level-headed as much as possible, because this could be very, very, very good to very, very off the wall, out of control. And it can happen the snap out of the fingers kind of thing. Okay, so that being said, that will kind of conclude all our major shifts, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about the major aspects. So I did that, and so I just want to go over the overshadowing energies. So we are in heavy duty pre-shadow Mercury retrograde. So what does that mean? It means like the couple weeks or the few weeks before Mercury stations direct on the exact date of November 9th. So pre-shadow acts very similar, like a little tougher than the post-shadow. So coming into it's always a little bit stronger. So chances are we're probably all experiencing the Mercury pre-shadow retrograde currently right now. But again, the exact will be November 9th to November 29th when we are Mercury retrograde exact, okay? Then we have, let me see, what do we have? We have Saturn retrograde, we have Uranus retrograde, we have Neptune retrograde, we have Chiron retrograde. So we have 3 planets, and Chiron is an asteroid. But anyway, we have 3 planets in retrograde status, and I mentioned this a couple weeks ago too. So we have Saturn making its last pass through Pisces for the last time, probably for another 28 to 30 years. Okay, some of us won't live long enough to see that transit come back. Uranus is just nicely going to enter into its final pass in Taurus, and that will be another 84 years before we see that come through that. And so a lot of us will certainly not live long enough to see that come around to Taurus again. And Neptune is also making its final pass through Pisces. And none of us will definitely live long enough to see that next pass of Neptune coming into Pisces, because that won't return for about another 165 years. So why do I mention this? I mention this because this is a big, big thing. So in the last about calendar year, we've had all our outer planets dipping their toes into the new signs and finishing off their final retrograde and moving into their brand new signs. Now that does not happen very often. Like, it's like extremely, extremely rare, because remember, each planet has their own orbit speed. The further out the planet, the longer the orbit speed. So in order for all those outer planets, so to basically be shifting signs within one calendar year, to have, you know, 248, 165, 84 years, 28 to 30 years, all those to line up in 1 year is astronomically slim to none. So that's why it's such a high impact. And I just want to put it out there, the Neptune in Pisces, so it's normally in a sign for about 14 years. Okay, so, and the ironic thing about this, this actually come up in one of my classes, is Neptune in Pisces, and that's illusions, delusions, you know, seeing and believing things that it looks one way, but it's exactly the opposite way behind closed doors. Hidden truths, you know, deceit, those kind of things. And the one thing that really stuck out in my mind when I looked at that, Neptune is in its home sign of Pisces. That's what really amplifies it, right? So it's in its home sign, it gets comfortable, it's very amplified, and it kind of goes double duty. And so the one thing that we can point out, and we've seen this on a global scale, is addictions, alcohol, drugs, street drugs becoming, or certain street drugs becoming legal. And so when you look at Neptune and Pisces, both the planet and that sign are particular, if they're challenged, which it is, are all about addictions and pharmaceuticals and drugs and those kind of things. So it's just kind of funny how you can pinpoint certain combinations back to certain things, and if you sit and watch, you can actually see it unfold. So I just wanted to share that with you. Might be a point of interest. Okay, so we will move on. So with this week, I do see lots and lots of hiccups. Okay, so as we get closer to Mercury retrograde, like right exact, again, that throws like lots of problems into everyday plans. Okay, so having to rebook, reschedule. So just be flexible and just kind of know that that's probably going to happen. But this week we have a lot of in conjunctions, and we have biquintiles, and we have sesquiquadrates, and inconjuncts, and all these kind of things going on. So what does that mean? So, and semi-square. So anytime we have those that I just listed off, that would include quintiles as well. But that just means that those are those little buggers that create havoc with our daily plans. They're minor negative aspects. And when you see those on the calendar, it means it creates havoc with daily plans. So now it's going to be further amplified by Mercury retrograde. So what does that mean? It means have patience, keep a sense of humor, be flexible, and be willing to adjust and switch plans around, right? Because that's what's going to happen. So, but like again, we have some of those really hard aspects this week. So it's problematic mixed with some really, really good stuff. So again, I will say the same thing as I said last week. Be very, very hyper focused on the positive that you can see going on, and positive energy going on, or positive opportunities coming in, or things that line up really, really well. Jump on those. But this can be a very, very aggravating, upsetting week, and it can actually have a lot of anger, especially within relationships. Okay, so just keep your hair on and do not pick fights. If someone throws you a hook to pick a fight, toss it back. Choose your battles wisely, and your best right now not to just walk away. Don't fight with anybody, because that's going to take you no place good real quick this week, especially with that full super moon in Taurus. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Again, plans shifting, changing, and we have lots of energy shifting, changing. So it's a very, very transitional week when I see this. So just expect, and something else I want to point out about, almost forgot, about Mercury retrograde, is you can expect people from your past to get a hold of you or show up or cross your path. So Mercury retrograde is almost like a magnet for people from the past showing up. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, so-and-so showed up and I haven't seen him in 30 years, and guaranteed if you look at the calendar, it'll be either in the pre-shadow late stage or the exact retrograde state of Mercury retrograde. So yeah, so expect people from the past to show up, because they're like magnets. They just like to climb out of the woodworks during this time. Okay, so the communication, let me see, is going to be reasonably high. But for the most part, Mercury is going to be reasonably quiet this week, but that's not going to slow down the energy. It's not going to slow down what you hear, what you see, what's going on, because we have a very, very, very active Venus and a very active Mars. And so remember, Venus is feminine. It's the females that are important to you. Mars is the masculine, and that usually includes the males, or males involved, or people that you would know as males. Okay, so again, we have very active planets all the way around, but in particular, Venus and Mars are very, very active. Okay, so we will be basically governed by Venus and Mars, but it's going to have like a little shaker effect of Uranus, that surprise out of the blue shock. And that can be very, very rebellious energy, especially when you have a Uranus square, okay? It's freedom-oriented. And Uranus is also about revolutionary energy, right? So it can be the fight for freedom that creates a revolution. Now, so that can be personal, that can be global. We can actually see that going on global right now. We have an active Neptune, and so that's about illusions, delusions, hopes, dreams, fears, those kind of things, creativity, being inspired. And very, very spiritual linked, okay? And we have an active Pluto, and we have a Pluto square. So Pluto is always about the death, rebirth, regeneration, okay? So Pluto means business. You know, I always like to call Pluto the pit bull, the dwarf pit bull planet. It means business when it comes around, and that's sitting with the square. So that can entail a lot of things, right? Especially when it's mixing with the square. It's a lot of problems coming up, or conflict. Again, it can be, mostly it's figurative death, but it can also, for some of us, you know, maybe that 1%, nothing to get bent out of shape about, but that can involve physical death as well. And As much as I don't like to say that, that's a possibility because when it shows up, I have to say it. Pluto, again, is the planet of death and rebirth, okay? So we have a fairly reasonably active north node as well. So the north node, when you see it or hear about it, that's always your future plans, your future path ahead, your destined fated place, okay? And something else I'm going to mention too is our post-shadow eclipse season. So that's always goes by the opinions of astrologers, right? And so when that comes up, I would say I allow about 2 months. So that's, anyway, some allow 2 to 3 months. So I about 2 months. So the last eclipse was on September 21st. So that will take us, I allow 2 months post shadow. So that will take us to about November 21st, and go figure that actually tends to be the end of Scorpio season. So remember, eclipse season, as the post shadow continues on day by day, it fades away day by day, right? So remember, eclipse season eclipses people, places, things in or out of life, and normally these changes usually tend to be permanent in nature, okay? So those come along to make changes in our life that we really have nothing to say about. All we have to say about it is how we respond and how we react to it. So those are the changes that come in life to kind of reposition us on our fated path, okay? So I just wanted to mention that. So, and when it's running hand in hand pretty much with Scorpio season, you can actually expect a lot of transition, a lot of transformation going on in life, okay? So that's something else. And again, it's fading away day by day. All right. Okay, so we are going to get into a little more of the areas that we can be looking at for topics, so house topics, okay? So I think I've covered everything. Oh, you know what? I'm going to cover the best days and the worst days, the most challenge days first. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go to November 3rd is going to be a pretty good day. So that's our Mars trine Neptune. So if that's every time you see a trine, that's like when the boss has a sense of humor. If you want something, go ask, because you'll probably get your way. If you want something, go after it, because it will probably turn out positively. The banker has a sense of humor, so that's an opportunity day to go after whatever you want and probably get exactly what you want, maybe plus a little bit more. Okay, so the next best day is going to be November 8th, and that's going to be a Sun trine North node. Again, the banker's got a sense of humor. It's a good, auspicious opportunity day, okay? So our hardest days are going to be November 4th, and that's the Mars opposition Uranus, right? So I would be very, very cautious, be very, very careful that day, because that is, to me, when I look at that particular, that means accidents can happen, or unexpected things going on, or like the god of war mixing with the planet of unexpected, okay? And so that can be, you know, the god of war mixing with freedom and rebellion. So like if you're looking at that in that particular direction, that could be the god of war and fighting and with rebellious energy after revolutionary energy, okay? Also, just keep in mind oppositions. It's not always conflict, problems, troubles, challenges. It can actually just mean on a lower energy or lower scale that you're being pulled in two directions. Like you can't be in two places at once, or you know, you're like a tug of war. You should be here, but you should be over there too. You can't be in two places at once. So it can be something like that as well. A little more calm or a little more mundane that way. And so the other challenged hot day. And again, when we have the Mars opposition Uranus, that's hot energy, that's hot burning, that's anger, that's fire, that's violence, okay? So Mars is very hot burning, and it's about angry, it's about being, well, can be miserable people too, right? Okay, and again, to me, that could be very much road rage too. Okay, we'll jump over to November 7th. So we have a Venus square Pluto. So Venus square, that's another problem. That's a challenge. That's a conflict. Often when I see this, that can be problems or fights within relationships, okay? Or fights over money, okay? Or it can be anything to do, like again, Pluto means business, right? The death and rebirth planet mixing with money, finances, love, relationships, partnerships. And this can be even just having challenges with our own self-value, self-worth, our values and value systems. So something that's a little lower grade, but on an inner level, it can be point out to that. But often, this can be conflict and fights over relationships and money, or both, okay? Those are, so the 4th and the 7th are the toughest days. The 3rd and the 8th are the best days, okay? So I just wanted to point that out. So now we are going to Oh, and also I want to mention again, I keep on looking at the wrong side of the calendar here. So November 9th, the Mercury retrograde. And just remember, the day that any planet stations is the strongest energy day, the strongest power day. So November 9th, Mercury stations retrograde exact on that day. And so it's the most challenging, the most powerful. So you can always expect hiccups in plans, things not going right, or often as Mercury retrograde out, that can be accident prone as well, or problems with transportation, right? So anytime you have Mercury, that's about communication, problems with communication, it's about transportation. So flat tires, dead batteries, road closures, problems with transportation. So that's very, very common, as well as lemon season for any sort of product that you would buy. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I will put a list on the a Facebook thing about the do's and don'ts for the Mercury retrograde. But you'll have to be in the Facebook group to see that, okay? Okay, so moving on to our house energies. So this is very, very highlighted. And so I want to talk a little bit about the health houses. So health house number 1, health houses are 1, 6, and 8. So house 1 has got some activity in it, okay? And yes, okay. So that's about the physical body, okay? So that's about physical body. It's about... It's about the head, face area, so exterior in the head, interior in the head, the face, inside the face, the sinuses, behind the eyes, anywhere on the face exterior, anywhere on the head exterior and interior, that includes the brain, okay? So just something to keep in mind. That includes the physical body, that includes the muscles, okay? This, and again, the upper teeth is another place that is included in that area. So anything to do with the physical body, health, healing, wellness, illness, okay? So that includes house number 1 for the health house. And so we also have the house number 8 lit up. So again, I'm just going to touch base. So the 8th house is also a health house, right? And so that has got to do with surgery. So there might be a surgery previous, there might be a surgery now. We might be talking about booking surgeries or rebooking surgeries or surgeries in advance, okay? So the 8th house is about hidden procedures, okay? It's about maybe things taking place that people didn't know about, but it is the house of surgery. So apply that accordingly, if at all, hopefully not, or it can be, post-surgery, it can be pre-surgery, anything to do with any activity surrounding a surgery. No, it's also about emotional and mental health, okay? So every time we have an 8th house, it's going to be about emotional health and mental health, how you process things emotionally, mentally, and getting rid of any sort of negative energy. So it's a fairly intense house. And again, that 8th house is about, the 8th house is the house of death and transformation. We have Pluto activity, death and transformation. So it's very, very lit up, a lot of Scorpio energy. So anytime you have an 8th house active, you have lots of Scorpio energy, you have an active Pluto, that is all triple amplified death transformation. So that can include figurative death, quitting a job, losing a job, or can include figurative death or physical death, the physical death of a person, a body, so that can happen. Transformation, transition, taxes, those kind of things, okay? Again, so I'm going to begin with the 8th house, other affairs that you could be looking at, okay? So we are looking at, investments, okay? Again, the house of death and transformation. And this is other people's money. So this can include, say, lotto money. It can include other people's money and resources. It can include inheritances, right? That's someone else's money, but it's also the house of inheritances. So other people's money, inheritance, family or familial or spousal money. So that could be like spousal support, alimony, something like that. And it's also about debt, big debt, capital, and it's about loans and big loans, taxes, legacy. It could also be about your credit score. It's also the house of sex and intimacy, and it's also the house of marriage, and it's about power control. It's also about psychology, parapsychology, mysteries, esoteric, mystical, occult, mysticism, those kind of areas that you might take some interest in. It's also about estate planning, funeral planning, insurance. You might be applying for insurance, talking about insurance, or having an insurance payout. Again, that's somebody else's money, but that falls in this house. Shared money, so that can be joint bank accounts, estates, wills, funerals. And again, it's a self-empowerment house too, right? So this is something that's always very good for everybody. Something else I want to point out, anytime you're looking at a water house, and that's house 8 we're talking about, there's only 3 water houses in the zodiac wheel. That's 4, 8, 12. And so those are the houses, they're all emotional houses, but they're also water houses, and water houses are dark. And when you're dark, you can't see. So it's about hidden things going on, okay? And we're going to talk about money. It's a big money house. So that can be, tax money. So that could be more on a global stage or a government stage. So it always includes big money areas, okay? So whether it's hidden money or found money or exposed money, it can include that as well. And again, this can be quite a week for that kind of area as well. Okay, so this can also take in relationships. Okay, so personal relationships, professional relationships, partnerships. So that can be business, right? It can be about money, finances. It can be about assets or anything tangible, okay? But this also includes our inner values, our inner value systems, and our inner value structures. Now, these are going to be under serious revamping and revising. So that's when you kind of basically upgrade your values. Like for example, I decide I'm worth more than that, and I'm not going to tolerate any nonsense anymore. Or, you know what, I just raise my value systems, and the people who really are negative people or bring me down people, they're kind of getting axed out of life. So you're, upgrading your value system. So that's a different story for everybody. Okay. And it's also, again, this is very amplified when it comes to finding balance and harmony. So finding that sweet spot, that balance and harmony, really always revolves around your inner values and your inner value system, because what goes on interior always shows up in the same kind of shape exterior. So as within, as without, right? Well, your inner values and your inner peace or harmony always will reflect on the outside, or it can be inner chaos, and usually you always have chaos going on the outside. So just as an example. Okay, so this can also include contracts. It can include agreements. It can include customers, clients, public relations, getting involved with clients in public or customers, those kind of things. It can also include helpers, practitioners, right? You might be looking for a health practitioner, or you might be a health care practitioner. It can also include beauty and aesthetics, contracts, agreements. I've already talked about that. So that's basically double amplified, the contracts and agreements part, okay? And also, when Venus is very active, that's going to be the important females, the important women in your life, and the important females or females that you attract in life, okay? That can be that as well. So very active in relationships, women and in men, okay? So the next thing we have going on is going to have to do with a lot of males that involved in life. And now because it's kind of in that late pre-shadow Mercury retrograde, and going into direct Mercury retrograde, I would not be surprised if you have men or women from your past showing up that were of high importance to you, okay? Somewhere along the line in the past. So again, Mars is, it's a very sexual planet as well. So it's a pure masculine, and Venus is pure feminine. They're both very, very active. So that can be, our energy levels are going to be kind of torqued right out this week, or energized or depleted. It's both, because we have trines and we have challenging aspects. So it can be very energizing, or it can be using your energy not wisely and feeling depleted. So choose wisely there, right? So, and Mars is always about your willpower. It's how you go out and get after things. It's very, very active. It's ambition. It's initiative. But it also is the god of war. So just keep that in mind. And so we have a lot of Scorpio energy. And so what does that mean? It's intense. It's emotional. It can be power control struggles. And when we have so much Scorpio energy, and we have Pluto active, that 8th house, that can be about jealousy, can be about vengeance, can be about power control, obsession, people being obsessed, obsessiveness, possession, or people might think others are view them as possessions, and that can be a real problem there. So again, when we have that Mars opposition Uranus, that can be unexpected domestic violence as well, unexpected road rage, acts of violence, global, take it as however it fits or whatever it means to you. Okay, and so this will also include, okay, the physical body. So you might be getting into better shape, taking on an exercise routine, or realize that, what, maybe I need to do something better for my body, right? Get into better shape or better diet, better exercise program, or maybe just starting, period. And so it will be maybe a little bit of a focus on how you appear to the world and how you're identified. You might be redoing that again, right? Okay, so again, a big thing on our physical body or physical health, how you're seen, right? And it can be weight loss too, or weight gain, or healing or illness or wellness, okay? So that's very, very lit up here. All right, and so again, this can do with the second house is very active too. That comes with Venus, right? So Venus rules the second and the seventh house. So your finances, your financial worth, your expenses, your budgeting, major purchases, your income, how you make money, where you make money, and it can also include savings. Okay, this can also include the environment and earthly goods, right? And on wanting to build security. Assets, valuables, and possessions. So when we have a second house lit up, that's always the possession house, and it's a valuables house. It's a money house, right? Normally, how we make money, how we earn money, usually can be job linked. Okay, money, possessions house. Okay. And so again, I won't mention the seventh house because that's very Libra. So again, relationships, partnerships, aesthetics, design, agreements, contacts. And this can really take in having more clients, more customers, customer relations, public relations, how people see you, how you interact with people and customers. That's very lit up. It's also an air house. And so we have the air house lit up. So that can do with anything to do with air travel, or maybe preparing for air travel, or looking at future air travel, those kind of things. And it can just be straight talking and communication. So anytime you have air travel, it can literally be in a plane or talking about traveling somewhere by air, or it's just a whole lot of talking, phone calls, emails, text messages, take it as it lands. And also something else, again, that's going to be repeat is relationship with self, finding balance, finding harmony, finding justice, finding peace, finding cooperative ways or diplomatic ways, or being diplomatic to others or with others. Okay, so that's something else that's very, very lit up. And something else that's this will be more so on a bit of a challenged area, I think. It can play out both ways. And so this will be about innovation. So we might be looking at technology innovation. So and friend circles, groups that you're hanging out with. Social media, this is a big thing. So and internet. So internet-based projects or internet-based work, anything to do with social media platforms. Now, when I see the Uranus opposition, so that can be problems with internet. Dropped internet connections, having problem with internet, problem with maybe cell phone lines, or any sort of radio waves. It's problems with those kind of things, right? Anything to do with the internet problems. And it can also be hacking, and it can also be people hijacking certain websites or breaking into certain websites, or a breach of security, those kind of things that can also show up. And it can also be problems with airlines, air travel, can be plane crashes, any sort of technical problems or technical glitches with anything to do with aircrafts, okay? This can also include large group organizations or humanitarian efforts, those kind of things, community-based organizations or associations. This, and then the good part about this one, it's also the 11th house is about hopes, wishes, and dreams. So it's always like the 40 wishes house. This is also an air house. Again, anything to do with air travel, lots of communication. That can be picking up in there as well, and can include politics. So when we're mixing politics with big money or tax-based money, things being hidden, things being revealed, that can also poke out of being things being found but causing problems for somebody else on the other side of the fence. But it's also about being with like minds, like groups, right? You're in association because you are working for a group effort to a certain destiny or a certain project for a certain point or a certain accomplishment. And again, it's the pennies from heaven house, okay? And again, I'm going to go over the 12th house. Again, this is a water house. And so this is a huge house. And this kind of, in some things, kind of overlaps house 8. So we can have some very, very high energy and high focus on, say, dream time, Akashic records, spirituality, occult, esoteric, mystical areas. So that's double amplified. So probably a lot of you out there will have this sort of energy and wanting to learn or wanting to dip into or just investigating, looking into, or having curiosity, right? This is also the behind the scenes house, the hidden or the secret. It means you can't see into it. You can't see what's going on behind closed doors, okay? So again, another water house, the hidden, it's dark, you can't see. It's also a psychology house, right? Okay. It's also a solitude time. So sometimes you need solitude time maybe to reassess those inner values or redo those value systems. It's also the private house, the house of privacy, where you just want your privacy, your solitude time, just to rest and retreat. Right? It's also the house of avoiding, evading, and escapism. So escapism, there can be healthy, there can be unhealthy. Healthy escapism is listening to music, tuning out, feeling, having solitude time, or reading a book, something like that, or sewing, or anything crafty. But solitude time, just to have some time to yourself. But there's also the other side of that coin of isolation and solitude time, where you're avoiding and evading and escaping in unhealthy ways, meaning booze and drugs, all those kind of things. The 12th house is also the house of foreign lands and foreign shores. So that can include people in there too. And so the 12th house is also linked with addiction. So again, as unhealthy escapism by addiction, okay? It's also art. It's anything artsy, fartsy. It's creativity. This can also include confinement, okay? So confinement or being isolated by, say, for example, you're stuck in a hospital, or maybe a prison or an orphanage or those kind of things. Feeling isolated, feeling stuck. And so when you have isolation, isolation can take on a negative energy as well too, meaning you're isolated because of something or somebody. So for example, if you're isolated in confinement, jail or prison, right, you're put there because of something that went on in the legal system, or you can be in isolation or stuck and isolated from family or friends due to an abusive relationship, right? Again, you're stuck and isolated because of somebody else, not your choice, but because of somebody else. Okay, and this can also be redefining yourself basically from the ground up. So basically starting over. So for example, like going through a divorce and doing your separation, doing the divorce, separation asset, and then you start into that new cycle. You end one cycle and basically you're starting from the ground up because of whatever assets or whatever you had going on or what you were known as or seen as in the previous cycle, well, that's being stripped away and you got to rebuild that new you. Okay, so that's part of the 12th house. It's a huge, huge house, but a very interesting house to say the least. And you can also have this is also very, very linked with past lives. The 12th house is always past lives, so that's always cool how that can show up too. And it's about dreaming, astral dreaming, lucid dreaming, astral projection dreaming, rest, retreat. So, and again, you might just need some time to rest, some retreat time, some recharge time, some rejuvenation time, and that would go quite nicely with, if you can use that with Mercury retrograde, right? Some rest time, some relax time. And it's just not a time to jump on the bandwagon and try force things out, especially going into the later part of the pre-shadow Mercury retrograde. So an example, like one of my teachers always used to say in the astrology courses I took, when you have Mercury retrograde coming in, that would be like throwing a bottle out into the ocean when the tide is coming in. It just comes right back to you. It doesn't go anywhere. It just comes back to you. So it just becomes frustrating. It can become very, very expensive as well. So you always want to wait till Mercury retrograde and the personal planets are going direct away from you. So when you throw that bottle into the ocean, it carries it away and it goes to where you want it to go instead of coming right back to you, right? It's like the rinse, repeat, redo, okay, every time you have retrograde anything, okay? Okay, so again, I got our 8th house affairs, so that's going to be, news or information or anything to do with surgeries, booking surgeries. And I just want to really, really touch on that area because it's very, very highlighted as a health area. Okay, so that takes in, actually it takes in a hell of a lot, right? But it's an intense energy and we're still in a lot of Scorpio energy, so it's intense. It's below the surface, it's aggressive, it's investigative, it's resourceful energy, it means business. And again, we're a Scorpio season. A Scorpio season is about the death and rebirth. And if you happen to look, it hits in the fall where everything freezes off, the leaves die, it gets dark, and it goes into dormancy. It brings this kind of season to the death, the end, to rebuild energy for a new cycle. And so we're kind of in that, you can apply that very literally to just about everything. Also in that, I think we got everything covered there. Okay. And we have quite a few more negative aspects or challenging aspects and positive, but the one positive aspects we do have are pretty nice. So again, like we're boxed in by good energy, we do have a sextile coming in here, which is really, really good. And so that just kind of gives us a little bit of a, opportunity and push forward. All right, yes, and our sextile is on November 6th. So it's like, every other day we have a good aspect, but it's hit, every other day with the tough aspect. So just keep that in mind, okay? So just, again, control your emotions and your tempers and behave in traffic, because that can easily get into a road rage problem. Those kind of things, unexpected fights. And so again, when I see the Mars opposition Uranus, that means it's just a little bit of a problem, and so you just want to pay attention to and react accordingly. Do not emotionally react. You want to respond accordingly is probably a better way to put it. Okay, so we are going to, let me see, we still do have quite a bit of water energy, and so what I mean by that is we still have lots of Scorpio energy. So again, when you see lots of water energy, that can be flooding, that can be leaks in walls, it can be pipes that break, in the ground, water mains, it can be flooding on the land, flooding to do with any of that. And again, I will just mention that that's a possibility of flooding on at a global scale, different players, and we have seen a lot of that going on. That can continue because we do have that super full moon, which is going to be a little more forceful on the tide or the energy front of the water, and so that can affect that as well too. Okay, so as a whole, it can be fairly emotional, so keep emotions in check, but it can be very, very beneficial. Something else I want to talk about is our major challenging aspects like oppositions and squares. Anytime you see those are hard major aspects or problems, right? And just remember, just because we have problem aspects, they don't always unfold as being a problem or something that really goes very, very sideways. They can actually present themselves as being very, very beneficial. So, for example, if you have a square in opposition that's a problem, that's a conflict, something is coming to a head that needs to be dealt with, okay? So, for example, if you hate your job, those kind of things, something comes to it where you finally quit and you move forward. So that would be, there's conflict, there's tension, there's troubles going on there, however that would unfold for your story, just an example. But for example, on a beneficial way, that would be sometimes squares and oppositions can show up, and it can be the difference between good versus bad, falsehood or lies versus truths, right versus wrong. However, there's always going to be the winner, there's always going to be the loser. So the loser, that usually doesn't go over so well, so that can be exposure of truths, right? So one person wins, one person gets called out on their BS or their lies, okay? So that's how it can be beneficial. So if you're the right one, right on for you, and if you're the troubled one, well, that's going to be a bit of a problem or a bit of a reality check. So take it as it lands. So like, not all negative aspects are going to fold out as negative. They can be quite positive, quite beneficial, just as I explained. Okay, so we are going to move on to our health and anatomy. So, yes, okay, so one thing I want to talk to you about. So when we're talking about health and anatomy, so I'm going to start with our busiest planet so far. So that's going to be the throat, the chin, that's Venus, by the way, cheeks, sense of taste, kidneys, ovaries, internal reproductive organs. That can include hormones, male and female hormones, and the endocrine system, blood circulation, and the skin, okay? And so it will also include, and we're going to talk about the moon here today. I don't often talk about moon, but I'm going to because we do have the full moon in Taurus. So the breast area, stomach, fluid balance, digestion, glandular secretions, the eyes, okay? This can include the muscular system, external reproductive system, again, that can include the hormones, male and female, testosterone, estrogen, those kind of things, endocrine system, the head, the face, the red blood cells, bladder, and adrenal glands. And also, when we have an active Mars, Mars can be cutting away, right? So again, cutting away anything that can be involved actually with surgeries as well, okay? Or getting rid of things, cutting certain things away in life. And again, cuts that can include the surgeries or cuts having to have something administered, help to due to cuts or incisions or anything Mars cutting, okay? It can include the ankles and the higher nervous system, okay? And the body electricity. It will be spinal column, nerve fibers, your feet, the pineal gland, telepathic functions, white blood cells, and kinesthetic functions. So that's like, therapy, going over and over and over things to get that kinesthetic function to learn, okay? And Neptune is also about viruses and mental health, mental illness, okay? This can include mental depression, emotional depression. This also includes the thymus gland. And now, last but not least, we will move into Pluto, if we can find it. He's here somewhere. Here we go. Okay, so also when we talk about Pluto, because it's quite active with the square, so this can be follow-up from problems or problems in these areas. So again, this can be colon or elimination and reproductive systems. So that can be the colon, that can be the rectum. Reproductive systems, again, that's male and female, like, uterus, ovaries, testes, anything like that. Pituitary gland, and abnormal growths, and hypothalamus gland. So when we talk about abnormal growths, that can be warts, that can be tumors, moles, birthmarks, skin tags, and of course when we talk about tumors, that can be any type of cancer in the body. So that can be maybe, you had problems and we're looking into, we got test results coming out of it, or we just discover a problem, or we're looking at healing or treating the problem, to do with any of those areas as well. And something else I do want to talk about is we have a lot of Pisces energy. And so when we go into Pisces, that is about our lymphatic system, that's about our blood, that's about our immune system, our lymphatic system, and it's also about toxicity and toxic water. It's about viruses, okay? So that is something that you want to be paying attention to in these areas. Scorpio. Again, this can include genitals, bladder, rectum, reproductive organs. And one more, we're going to touch on the Gemini area, because that's going to touch on the lungs, the collarbone, the hands, the arms, the shoulders, and the nervous system, okay? That can include the elbows as well. This can, and also I want to do is mention about the lower and the upper teeth. So because we do have a little bit of Taurus, because we have that full moon in Taurus, we also have Uranus just kind of at that pivotal point going back into the 29th degree Taurus. So that can very much, again, I'm just going to repeat this area because it's double amplified. So anywhere in the throat, neck area, the ears, vocal cords, the thyroid, the tongue, the mouth, the tonsils, and lower teeth. So we have the upper and lower teeth very, very highlighted in this week, okay? So there can be problems with teeth, getting teeth fixed, or you might just be having an oral check, but everything's good. But it can be teeth oriented in any way, shape, or fashion, good or challenged or problem, okay? And I think that probably will wrap up our reading. Again, it's a very active week and it's very transformative. It's a very busy week, lots going on, and it might be a little bit hard to keep up with, okay? So again, we have stuff going on every day, and we just have very, very I'm not going to say upset, but it's very vital aspects going on. And it's every other day there's going to be something going on. Your planet's going to be changing. We have good mixed with positive mixed with negative aspects, like hard aspects that are tough. We have really, really exceptionally good ones. And it's going to be very easy to lose sight of being positive. So do be very, very hyper-focused and stay as positive as possible, and if you need to reground, do that as much as required. So be sure to shake off, purge, delete any negative energy, get rid of it. So if that means going for a walk, being in nature, doing gentle exercise, going for a tea or a coffee with a positive friend, updo it, pay it forward, cleaning your house, doing something, anything to burn off negative energy. And lots of times I would suggest burning off negative energy, like cleaning house, cleaning a vehicle, cleaning your deep freeze, cleaning your fridge, because it really burns off negative energy. And I hate to say this, but when we're all cheesed off, you can do triple the work in like less than half the time. So in the end, you have your house or your fridge or your deep freeze, your vehicle cleaned, and you burnt off all that negative, ugly energy, and you have something to show for it. And then by the time you're done, you feel pretty good about stuff because you actually feel accomplished, you got things done, and all that negative energy has been burnt and out the door. Okay? So with that being said, that will close off our weekly woo from November 3rd to November 9th. Bye for now.